This is a message to all my supporters of this podcast. I'm introducing a new supporters program. You can contribute a small amount as a one-off payment to show your love for this podcast. Thank you in advance for all your contributions.
A payroll and HR company needs to be prepared for whatever is going to happen. You could say that over 70 years of experience helping businesses all over the world run smoothly is good preparation. But for ADP, that's not enough. To make sure millions of people are getting paid on time and in compliance, we're staying on top of each new piece of legislation. So when it comes down to it, ADP isn't just a payroll and HR company. We're the company that helps you navigate the complexities. ADP, HR talent, time, benefits, and payroll. Informed by data and designed for people.
This is the Absolute Business Mindset podcast, created and hosted by Mark Hayward. I am a corporate employee with an entrepreneurial mindset. This podcast will help and support you with new ideas about business. These are my thoughts, ideas, and comments. Today, we have Robert Horsley, who has been in the mobility space for decades. He is a senior leader in both Fragment and in the worldwide ERC, and he's very active in mobility in the Bay Area. So hello, Robert. How are you today?
Doing great. Thank you for asking me to participate.
Excellent. So we're going to approach this slightly differently to what we usually do on the podcast. We're going to delve into mobility instead of delving into your career. So we're going to talk about mobility and how it's affecting business and how that sort of is impacting the new generation with millennials and various other types of people. So as my first question to you, Robert, so what actually does an assignment give to an employee?
Well, let's step back. And first off, I think it's much more interesting to talk about mobility and how it influences business than me. Yeah, so, okay. But I think at the end of the day, it's kind of a perspective I've gained over a long period of time. And one other correction, I don't know that I'm a senior leader of worldwide ERC, but I am on the board. I've been on the board for a long time, and hopefully have helped steer a great organization with a lot of great people to a place where we're really kind of helping the industry, helping everybody understand what the industry is capable of, and helping people in general deliver at kind of the highest level they can.
Awesome.
And I think that's maybe a good segue because, in my time working in the space, I don't think there's been a more important time for mobility than today, right? I mean, I think businesses require the ability to find skilled workers, skilled professionals at a scale that like never before, because we've got so many companies with so many, unique agendas. They're looking for people to help them go much faster than before. So as a consequence, they're looking everywhere for these skilled workers. At the same time, these skilled workers are wanting to work where they want, how they want, when they want, in the world. So by definition, that's kind of mobility, right? And my definition is a little bit different than a lot of people. I think the remote work is involves mobility. I think people that are getting up and going to where their clients or where that work needs to be done is mobility. So travel is much more involved. And then, your traditional, we're going to move this person from this place to either do something or to expand the knowledge of an entire organization. I think that's the traditional assignment, if you will. Somebody's going from one place to another to either, elevate their career by learning a lot more, or elevate an organization by bringing knowledge to that organization of something else. So I actually think we see a little bit less of that because I think, people have just become better global citizens, or, have a better grasp on the fact that the world isn't just where they're sitting. And what we're seeing more of is, how do you find this, what I call, through talent acquisition or talent management, talent deployment. Those are the real three pillars that are driving mobility, right? We need to go find people that have these skills wherever they are in the world. We need to put people somewhere with these skills that can help deliver on something, or quite frankly, we need to give people experiences and in order to retain or to attract them. So, and people want to work again very differently. So I think mobility is at the center of all of those strategies. I don't know in the traditional, that it's framed in the traditional mobility, how people would see that, but definitely there's strategies all through an organization now.
So you've unpicked quite about 5 or 6 different points there, and hopefully we can go through each of them in our conversation. But no, you've given a really high level synopsis of basically mobility now, which is drastically different than it was maybe 10, 15 years ago. So I think that's incredibly interesting. And so has that changed from long-term assignments to what's been termed as short-term business visitors, people just popping over to different countries and different states and things like that? Is that changing mobility for business?
Is that changing mobility for business? I think by definition, what we've talked about is mobility for business is different than it was 5 years ago, just a few years ago, that there is a little bit less of these long-term assignments because the speed of business today is not long-term. Everything goes fast, right? Much faster. And you can be much more agile now, right? So by definition, things are not going to be kind of long-term in nature. You still see some of that for maybe a high-level leadership role where you're putting somebody someplace for an extended period of time so they can, help meld an organization.
So do you think mobility in the sort of long term, are you saying mobility in the long term is more for talent reward than maybe it was previously?
Well, I think talent rewards has definitely gotten more involved because a lot of people are starting to see it as a reward, right? And I think I briefly said, I think what a lot of employees are looking for now is an experience, right? Yeah. And they're using mobility as something that could differentiate that experience. And, you hear it all the time. I want to go work for 9 months in this place or this place. Now, can you work that out with all the government regulations that exist? I think you have to be very purposeful in what you're doing. At the same time, you can work towards giving people the experiences that they're looking for. So yes, I think rewards is much more involved. So again, I think talent acquisition is as well. That talent acquisition's done a great job of figuring out where do they get the people that the company needs, right? And sometimes that involves skill sets that are only available, or I should say that are in very short supply. So you need to be very open to having a mobility strategy to solve that.
We'll be back after a quick break.
Hi, I'm Alex, the host of X Health Show. Meet the future of healthcare. Think X-Men, that's X Health. Actual superheroes behind programming living cells to cure cancer once and for all. Tech that detects preterm delivery in seconds, brain-computer interface, or apps that employ AI to match your disease with the best treatment. X Health Show brings to you visionaries who push the boundaries of healthcare from Switzerland, the heart of Europe and the most innovative country in the world. Let me introduce you to their startups. Head to X Health Show, meet the future of healthcare. Happy to greet you there.
And do you think in this new world where people are now working more remotely, as you say, someone might is working for a company but actually wants to go somewhere exotic for 6 to 12 months and work remotely? Is that a feasible strategy for business?
Well, I think it needs to be feasible. I don't think it's straightforward, So I think that people are asking, that's a stretch for how companies have thought over the last few decades, right? That definitely raises the eyebrows of, from a tax perspective and an immigration perspective of how do you do this legally and in a way that's just, right? So I do think at the same time, your employees are the people you're trying to attract and retain. This is what they're saying they want. So you've got to kind of find a solution there. Now, it may not be through the traditional employment methods, right? Yeah. As we move more to kind of a modular workforce, gig, the gig workers, the contract workers. Like it may need to take, to give, that people may need to get, people may need to give a little bit. And it may be, so, okay, I'm going to be a contractor and go work where I think I can work or I want to work, and probably without some of the same benefits you might get as an employee. I'm not saying that's the solution, but there's a give and take to all this for sure. But I don't think that desire to have a more of an experience is going away anytime soon. So I think it's incumbent upon those in business to figure out, how do you do that? How do you do that legally? How do you do that agilely?
And I think the sort of short-term business visitor piece is probably very, very poignant for so I work for a Big Four, and it's very poignant for our business, in the sense that a lot more now people are spending short periods in a given location and then back to their home location, and there's all sorts of tax and other regulations that need to be looked at. Is that the biggest disruptor in the market at the moment?
I don't think that. I actually don't see that as a disruptor. I think that's the way business is conducted today, right? Again, things are identified and need to happen quickly.
Yeah.
The easiest way to do that isn't to move somebody somewhere, it's to put somebody somewhere.
Yeah.
And I think the real key to that will be able to, do you know enough about your workforce that you can identify who can go to where the solve needs to be done quickly? Do they have the right to go there? Do they have the agility in their own life to go there? Can they go back and forth? And is the organization set up to do that? So I think short-term business traveler, if you will, using that kind of an acronym, is definitely a tool to be able to address both what some people really want to do and what's really required in business today.
And
I think that will continue to evolve.
The pace of work now, so nowadays everyone is moving a lot faster. Is that a reflection on these business visitors' needs, that they needed to spend a week in wherever, Germany, back to the UK or into US, whatever? Is that now just standard? Is that's just going to continue for the foreseeable future?
I think so. I mean, the speed of business is a whole different. I think technology and both what's possible and how people's expectations are driving this, the speed of business, right? Is that, just things can go a lot faster, and people expect them to go a lot faster. Markets expect to have a greater return more quickly. Those things are driving, I think, the speed of business much more. How it's addressed and how you're able to do that, I think there's a lot of talk about how do you make your organization more agile and more proactive and ready to address some of these things so you can. But I think it all comes down again to a more integrated model and integrating lots of different modules into things. So to deliver something somewhere, you're probably integrating some traditional people that you are having go back and forth. You may be assigning somebody there for a longer term, and you're probably enlisting the support of a lot of people locally too, right? So there's probably not one solution to that, but certainly I think today's employees expect to be much more mobile. And again, that goes from being remote and virtual to actually getting on a plane, going somewhere, or being at some kind of a destination they want to be at, but still able to contribute to whatever it is they're working on.
And are visas causing a sort of bottleneck? They've not really evolved in the same way that other parts of the mobility industry is. Is there a blocker there for companies that need to respond to quick movement, that visas are sometimes causing problems, slowing things down?
Well, I think some governments are a little bit slower than others. I mean, this all comes at the same time that governments are struggling and populations are struggling with, kind of a populist or nationalistic, perspective on things. How do we keep, our citizens, if you will, connected and integrated into the economy, at the same time stimulate it with those that are wanting to invest and those that are wanting to to contribute to kind of the elevation of one's economy. And that's a hard needle to thread, right? And where you've got all kinds of situations around the world where people are saying, hey, there's been too much of this. Maybe it went a little bit too far, too quickly, and it's kind of readjusting itself. I think most of the visa strategies, from my perspective, from Robert Horsley's perspective, I think most of the visa strategies out there by governments are probably a little bit, a little bit behind the times from a speed perspective. And this is something that we really need to solve, right? A company is looking to use a visa to solve this. Can it be done in the real time of what the business needs? I think it's going to have to speed up a little bit. I think governments are quickly, moving into a more digital platform, so they know what's going on and they can make things happen more quickly. So they do meet the needs of those that are really coming in to their countries to elevate something, so that to do something that the country actually benefits from.
Yeah, and I think if a country wants to be open for business and wants to bring people, specialists into their country or whatever, they need to reflect that in their visa system. And I understand what you mean with the sort of populist views that are entering into politics at the moment. But equally, I totally agree. I think we need to. If countries want to feel that movement of people, they then need to reflect that on the speed as well for their employees in coming into their country and actually also leaving the country as well.
No doubt about it. So it really comes down to what the speed, everything sped up when it became apparent that it was possible, right? And people use speed as a differentiator, right? And the digital nature of everything, as that started to get more and more embedded in business, became more and more possible, right? So you had people's expectations that you should be able to, and you had a business that had digitized to a certain extent. I use that word liberally. So they were able to do that. They were able to get kind of the flywheel of making things happen. I think governments haven't gotten there as quickly, but will. As governments see this as an advantage, right? And then the more and more digital they'll get, the more they'll be able to address these needs. I think they're just a little bit, I don't want to say governments are a little bit behind the curve. I think governments typically are embracing the same technologies that businesses have. It's just when you think of the massive scale they have to do that and the change management that's involved, I think it's somewhat understandable. And they're trying to do it with eyes open. What problems could this cause? Where a business is much more open to being able to say that this disruption may cause a little bit of pain over here, but they'll be able to solve it. That's wholly different when you're dealing with people's lives.
Yeah, and I totally agree. So just on that idea of tech, so how do you see tech impacting business, global mobility business going forward? Because I know I work in the global mobility tech area, so we have various tools and software that we provide to corporates. But from your point of view, how has tech impacted the mobility arena?
I think it's the most exciting thing that's happened is that, ultimately you're doing this, a mobility strategy is there to help a person and help an organization deliver on some kind of business need, right? And technology can help identify who's the best to do that, what the need is, stay connected with both the company and the individual involved. It can start to predict what's going to happen, what success might look like. It can start to predict how long things will take, and it will start to be able to inform the individual. This is what this experience is going to be like. It's almost like it could be in the person's ear, directing them through the experience. Certainly, be able to give them a preview of what that experience is. So I think it's very exciting. I think one has to be brave enough to put these capabilities into an organization so you can start to play as things get more and more digitized. I think the important thing, and at Fragment, I think one of the things we pride ourselves in is both our size and the amount of information we kind of curate constantly because of our size, and at the same time developing and maintaining an intimate relationship with our clients and those people that we're serving to the individual. So I think that's the imperative, is having enough information, enough size that you can use information effectively, that you've got enough that can help start to inform, and that you don't lose focus and just deal with scale, but that you don't lose focus on the individual themselves. So that individual's experience is really important. How are you staying connected with them? How are you how are you letting them know what's important to them? I think one of the things we talk about all the time is, what are we doing in the moments that matter? Not the moments that matter necessarily to us in getting something done, but the moments that matter ultimately to the organization, and the moments that matter to the assignee himself or herself, where they're in the middle of something. So technology is very good at knowing those things and helping you deliver.
Because mobility is quite unique in the fact that for a company that has or helps a company with their mobility, you're actually dealing with the client, and that can be the employee and the employer. So it's a unique area that you're actually delving into, helping the individual make that move around the world. But equally, there will be some sort of review or a sort of management system in the company as well. So it's a very, very unique area of business, isn't it?
Well, yeah. I mean, typically, and you have to be careful on how you define who's the client. But I'll say, the stakeholders involved there's a multiple sets of stakeholders across a mobility kind of lens, right? You've got an organization that's undertaking moving somebody or helping somebody move or putting them in the field or doing it for a variety of reasons, right? We talked about that could be to create experiences or to actually deliver on something that they promised to deliver, or to put people in the right place at the right time to have something else evolve, right? So there are lots of talent deployment, talent development, talent acquisition, and talent management, I would say, is really helping people along to make sure they're getting what they want and the organization is getting what they want. So that seems like I'm going to use the word integrated, very integrated approach, right? And I think that's the key for the industry. I think for the mobility space, like, everybody kind of saw themselves as trying to own everything end to end. And by definition, there are all kinds of things that need to be thought through when you define end to end. So I think the future really holds, and I think there's all kinds of examples of this, is being great at what you do, right? Not necessarily a jack of all trades, where I hear the term single point of contact used a lot. I don't think there is a single point of contact that knows everything that you would possibly know and deliver on that expertise. I do think in an integrated world, somebody may want, I use I think in terms of technology and systems all the time. I've kind of got a systems mindset, if you will. There was a time in my phone that I was collecting apps, right? Because there was an app for everything. Now I think I look at everything the other way. I've got very few apps on my homepage, and I depend on everything I need to be integrated into one of those apps that's pulling it all together. Yeah. Now, I want the choice of figuring out who I want to be integrated into that environment. I listen to music a lot, and I do that at home, and I use something called Sonos to distribute my music. But I have specific, where I get my music curated from. I want to be able to pick that. I don't want Sonos to tell me where I can get my music from or where I can distribute it. I want to be able to listen to it on my phone, at my home, in my car. And my expectation is the experts in each one of these areas will work hard to make sure they're fully integrated. So when I go in my car, it fully works there. When I'm at my home, it fully works there. When and when I say it is of my choice. I'm going to choose a music curator that I want, and I might be fickle and choose another one. So I'm constantly looking for them to spend their energy being great at what they do.
It's really interesting because global mobility has introduced lots of things that they're called ecosystems, they're called platforms. They're talked about as sort of center points for whether you're where you're covering everything from long-term assignments to short-term business visitors to low-cost workers or gig economy. Everything is sort of trying to be encapsulated into one arena. I think that's a really interesting point, that everyone is now expecting that, rather than pleasantly surprised when something like that happens. Do you think technology, we've touched on technology before, but do you think that's the main portal, the main place that technology can really add value?
Well, I'm a technology advocate. I think technology can add value in multiple places, and getting efficiencies in how you do things, having information exactly the right time that you need it. I think I'll call one of the things I'm most excited about is contextual knowledge, right? Is delivering contextual knowledge and guidance right when the person wants to hear it or see it or feel it, right? Not a Wikipedia approach where here's everything you ever wanted to know about something. There are people that want to consume it that way. More and more people want to consume it right when that event is about to happen. So they're knowledgeable over time. So I think technology is a great driver of that. I do think that the level of expertise that's required for almost anything is so deep that it's not for novices, right? It's not. So it's, hey, I'm not saying you have to be around for 100 years to be an expert, but I don't think you can be an expert in all trades. So I think mobility space should take a lesson of many companies in the last decade who've decided not to try to do everything, but try to do something and be incredibly good at it.
Yeah.
And then work with others for people to experience it. I think the airplane is a perfect example of that. They're the people that make the frames, and that's what you think you're flying on, but the people that make the seats, the engines, a lot of the different things are coming from experts, and you experience it in one piece. I think that's true from just how people perceive things as well. Your brand is typically known for something. At Fragment, our brand is immigration. And so I don't think you're going to see us delving into all other areas of mobility, because we think to be an expert, and I use that term, though I think you need to be expert. I don't think you can hold yourself out as experts in many different geographic locations. So I want to be careful there. But you want to do something and do it really well and then play with everybody else in your space. I think that's incredibly important. Those people that say the only way you can get this to feel together is to use us for everything, I think it makes sense that people want to feel and have an experience that's all put together. I think it's a little bit dangerous to do that with people that this isn't necessarily what they, are first and foremost thinking about. So I think that does leave room then, great opportunity for the technologies that exist that can help have all those inputs, right? Yeah. Whatever they are, and make the most of those inputs into somebody's reality. At the end of the day, it's human capital management, right? Is what we're talking about. And it's understanding what's needed and delivered and put together, and somebody's right there with it when they need it. Right now, that's in the mobility ecosystem, I think there are technologies that can help with that. Those technologies don't replace people. They don't replace expertise. But I think there's a great opportunity for organizations to integrate with them.
So what about low-cost workers? What's your view on that? So a company that might be technology might go to India or some parts of Eastern Europe, wherever, to get their employees and maybe move them around as well. What's your view on them?
Low-cost workers. Well, I don't know. Obviously, they're different. You're looking around the world for skills. Yeah. I think the days of I have a term for it is immigration arbitrage, where you're using immigration or mobility as arbitrage to do something from a lower cost perspective. I think ultimately you're finding skill sets in places around the world that you should expect are going to equalize at some point. Just the nature of the more and more you use them, the more and more expensive it becomes, the more and more that's invested into getting them into a single culture, into a single working environment, right? So I think it's really not so much about the cost, is more, and maybe I'm naive and maybe I'm just more, optimistic than most, but I think what it is, it's about finding skills. And it's by finding enough people with the right skills that you can get them to work together, that, you start looking, globally. At the same time, most of what is being consumed globally as well. So it only makes sense to understand and have a connected, diverse workforce, because you are delivering to a connected, diverse workforce. You don't want, company A who's selling a product to country Y to self-impose, country A's, culture and way of thinking and way of doing, when country Y may have a whole different mindset. I think at its core, you need to be able to design and build for your customer. Yeah. And in order to do that, you need to understand your customer. And the more you have your customers in the world, you need to have people from all cultures, backgrounds, and geographies kind of involved in that process. I know that is kind of aspirational.
No. I think you hit the nail on the head. It's a skill. It's what you need to get a skill. You might look outside your country, and you might look, if it is a low cost, if it's not a low cost, depends on what actually is needed for your business. So I totally agree. It's more looking at where you can get the right people that fit into your culture, fit into your company, as well as just, it's not just to have someone that is lower cost than it costs in your country. So I would totally agree. It's a skill set thing. Millennials, how's that impacted? yes. But how would you say that that's impacted business and mobility?
It's just a new generation that looks at things a little bit differently. I think they are more, and I hate defining them as a whole group, but I guess the whole world does. I think they're looking for experiences. They're looking to have, talk about mobility. They are looking for more change. They're more apt to change. Hey, listen, I think everybody has that in them. You're either kind of have a changed mindset, and you want to experience new things, whether that is something new in the company or try it at another company, or, everything's a journey. Everything is a journey. Everything changes. Whether you know it or not, change is inevitable. I think this generation is much more comfortable with change, and has basically, as the buyers, if you will, have demanded it, right? And said, hey, this is possible. This is the way I want to work, and it's more accepted now. So, of course, we need to build frameworks that accommodate it. I am not the millennial basher that, a lot of people might be. I think it's great that they have, that they express kind of what is most important to them, and that we understand it. Now, that everything is a two-way street, right? It's got to fit within a framework that makes sense for an organization and makes sense for the customer base. And I think it's really trying to figure that out. So I think, what did I hear? I heard a stat that Gen Z, worker in Gen Z will end up moving house 25 times and moving jobs 20 times during their career. So, hey, if you're in the mobility space, that is ensuring that there's a lot of mobility. I think from an organizational design perspective, we're going to need to modularize things more, right? So you come in, and I've talked about this a fair amount. I don't know if I've ever explained it very well, but I think the more things are modularized, from education to work, you kind of sign up and you know what you're getting. You know what you kind of will learn, and the same with the organization, right? So from an employee's perspective, this is what I know I can do and how long it will last, and the skills I may learn within this. From an employment perspective, you have to have something that is getting done by somebody that actually knows it, and your return on for them is, and you're going to increase your skills over here in the top right. And then you've got a worker that can continue to move around into different, pieces of a puzzle here. And the employee can start to kind of mold their own career journey in here. So it's kind of what you would call, I guess, the gig economy within. I'm a believer you can do that within organizations as well. You don't have to just do that as freelancers.
Yeah, and the bigger the organization you work for, the more opportunity and more scope there is to be able to move around, and so working for a big four, there is lots of opportunities of being able to move to a different part of the business, and I think that is right. Some of the people are experiencing that change because people are more used to change. We talked about the technology and how that changes everything. Millennials are more used to being impacted by change, so they're a lot more tolerant to change. So we're talking about, this is just a sort of segue slightly. So we talked about millennials and we've talked about mobility, but do you agree that now business is being driven by entrepreneurs rather than corporations, and how that's affected mobility as well?
I think business has always been driven by entrepreneurs, right? And bigger businesses take those entrepreneurial concepts and bring them to scale, right? So I don't think, again, I'm a believer that what's new is what's possible, but change, I think, was always something that people wanted, but it was never expected, right? People didn't move around jobs, so when you did, it was unusual. Once it became the kind of the norm, it kind of just caught fire, right? Mm-hmm. I think, and I've got, I'm really lucky. I live in a part of the world where an entrepreneurial mindset is rampant, and not where you're trying to beat the other guy. Actually, you're trying to help people all over in and around the Bay Area. It's kind of, what's next? What's possible? How can I help you? There's a great mindset here of collaboration. I don't know that everything that's going to be invented has. I think there's always a next iteration of something. There's a lot of things that have been tried decades earlier that didn't succeed that now succeeded, when they're reintroduced. I think food delivery is a good one, right? I mean, there were companies that tried that a decade or 15 years ago to deliver something to your doorstep so you wouldn't have to go do it. They failed wildly. And now they're massively successful. So I think it's timing too. But no, I think the entrepreneurial mindset is what continues to drive business, and then those that can figure out how to make that scale if they choose to.
So there's now in companies, there's now entrepreneurs. So there's people that are basing the same sort of entrepreneurial mindset, but actually just factoring it into a section of a company. So I think there is that flexibility. I suppose my drive to the question is, how does an entrepreneur affect mobility? We talk a lot about corporations and companies that need to move people around for a global strategy. For an up and coming business, how do they enter into the mobility space when they're quite a young company?
That's a good question. I don't know that there's a perfect solution for that, and I think that's where some of the bigger companies have an edge up as you start to scale, right? I think it's massively hard to build a worldwide organization in today's world. I think that the bigger companies have that head start. They already have that footprint. They've already figured out how to overcome a lot of that. The smaller companies or the more entrepreneurial ones, again, or entrepreneurial that are trying new things. I think this is what we touched on this at the very beginning. I think that those are companies that are going to drive change. Governments will start making it easier, right, to go faster, to get people where they need to be and hear what's needed. Again, I think regulation and the like has a couple things. They're reacting to what's needed, right, while they're trying to inspire growth and stability and security for their citizens, right? So, again, as they become more digital and can see trends more quickly and can see solutions more quickly, they'll be able to adapt to what these companies probably need in more real time. So I think mobility for the smallest of companies isn't easy to do that well and to do that legally. I think that it will become easier. Just like technology made the cloud, right? You didn't all of a sudden have to have a massive computer and be able to afford a massive server on your own to be able to deliver on some technology that you were able to create. Now you can get that and kind of lease that on a as you need and as you need to grow basis. I think that really drove that in the cloud SaaS solutions really drove the ability for companies to go even quicker yet, right? Yeah. They didn't need to get to the point where they invested in all that on their own and build that all on their own. It was ready made for them. Yeah. You turn it on and turn it off. So another example of how technology has really made things go a lot faster.
It's like, I suppose, to just mention a company, so Facebook, for example, they based a lot of their business early stages within a very local area, and they got to a point where they'd scaled that actually meant that they were a tipping point where they needed to have offices in London, wherever else in the world. I think it's interesting that you say that there's a scale or scaling your business, and equally there is that tipping point where suddenly things start going on a global scale rather than just based in their locality. That's going to happen more and more. We're going to have another Facebook, or we're going to have another Google that's going to explode. I think it's an interesting idea that those guys actually kind of need the global mobility support, because they will not understand, and this is making a bit of a generalization, but they won't have the insight into locations, regulations, like overseas regulations and laws. So I think they need to get at the right point in their tipping point to actually start asking for advice and getting that information to their company before they do scale to the rest of the world.
And I think they're great at that, to be honest with you. I'm a big believer in all those companies you just mentioned, and I think the reason I believe in them, everybody's gone astray at some point and not seeing exactly what they had created would, all positive. Not anything and everything is always positive. There's going to be a kind of a side consequence to things, and I think they've been great at kind of starting to figure out those things and how to bring them back to the positivity of connectivity and the like. I think those organizations have found that they need, again, what we talked about, they need to understand the cultures they're delivering to. So they want people there. And they're sending people on tours to understand it, first off, and then they're putting their own people there. They also have a massive need for talent, right? And talent exists everywhere. So they have a desire to kind of put people where people want to be part of them, where they can expand it. You can't just take all your people from one place when you get to that place. So you want to be able to deliver to a place, and you want to be able to get talent from those places. So do I think those companies have a thirst for mobility strategies and the like? No doubt about it. And I don't think that's news to them. I think that they are very good at agilely kind of addressing those needs. And at the same time they're doing that, they're creating opportunity for lots behind them, because they're putting together infrastructures that will have an evolution as well. All of a sudden, if there are a lot of mobility people in certain places, those people tend to then bring that knowledge to that place where others can use it, both inbound and outbound. So it's a pretty good, it's making mobility more important once again, because you're trying to, the more people understand it. I think the C-suite actually understands mobility for the first time, and what, their ability to need to get people and put people where they need to be. Yeah. I think it is something that has become more important enough that the C-suite completely understands these are necessary things that really can be differentiators for us, for them, for whoever, to be able to attract people, retain people, and deliver whatever it is that they're trying to deliver. So if you're in mobility, it's a very exciting time, because you're more important than ever, your spaces. At the same time, there's a lot going on inside mobility, right? That is changing. So you need to be kind of an agent of change and ready to change. I think people in mobility understand that everything's changing all the time. Technology is taking more and more of a role, which is great. So you need to be open-minded to change and really look into what you're trying to solve, not what you did, but what it is you're trying to help others achieve.
And so we've touched on quite a lot of different areas. What is for you the next disruptor, which is a very well-coined term, but what's actually going to change in mobility that in the next 5 years will be different for people who are entering into the workforce?
The advancement of augmented reality and virtual reality will have a key role in mobility, because you'll be able to, and I think audio is a huge, and I think, and I don't want to take credit for thinking that I thought of all that. I think Mark Andreessen, who I think is a great futurist in his own right, talks a little bit about this. Is having the AirPod or somebody's product that is right in your ear all the time, and then using some kind of a virtual assistant that kind of knows what you're looking for, knows it can almost help direct you.
Yeah.
Right. And in the mobility space, the more we realize that people want to be informed, they want to be guided, they want to have that really telling them what's next, but to kind of remind them in their ear. The fact that you can use virtual assistants to help measure something or help you get information together, the fact that you can use augmented reality a little bit to kind of set people's expectations of what's possible. Many more people consume. I mean, you put your podcast on YouTube, right? Yep. But it's really a listening thing for the most part. Nobody wants to look up for an hour. But people do want to consume things typically better visually now in short little bites.
Yeah.
I'm sure nobody's listening at this point.
Well, this is the thing, the podcast, just as a slight segue, the podcast is a well-trodden path for longer versions. YouTube is sort of evolving into different uses, so that's why I released my podcast and the YouTube, so you're covering all the bases, or as many bases as you can.
Well, good on you. And I think there's the preview of what the need is, right? People want to absorb information probably a little bit more when it's visual. Yeah. So can you deliver some kind of a visual knowledge to somebody just in time? I think that's where the augmented reality and the virtual reality really play in. I think audio has a huge, it scales so well. And can you announce, can you notify, can you bring knowledge to somebody just in time? So you have to have great data sets. You need to learn from it all the time. You need to be really great at what you do. You need to integrate into how people really consume information and how they want to do it. So it's an exciting time. I think the technology arc of not just doing things to do them efficiently, but to deliver just-in-time information. Yeah. To the actual users, I think that's the next big thing in the mobility space.
Okay. So wrapping up this, got the last couple of questions for you. Does greater flexibility in work mean greater productivity?
Wow. Okay. So people have this argument all the time, right? I'm a believer that it does, but you have to, for the right people, right? For self-starters, for people that are their goal oriented, people that understand what the deliverable is, what success looks like, and all those things, and not sure of how that gets done. I think absolutely you get more productivity out of it. I think is what we're going to do is learn what frameworks exist to help people stay productive in that flexible environment, because not everybody's the same, right? And so there need to be frameworks to kind of measure, not for measuring sake, but just to, okay, how do we prompt and remind that there's an ultimate goal here that they need to achieve?
Yeah.
and I think that's a whole nother subject matter.
Yes.
Work.
I thought I'd throw it in there just as a question, not to surprise you, but I think it's an important point that maybe we can touch on another time. But
I could talk about that all day long. I'm very much a supporter of it, but I think there's some keys to manage for that, right? How do you keep people connected when by definition they're not?
Yeah.
But that connectivity and that integration is vital to success. So we can talk about that another time, but very keen.
Last question. How would you define a global citizen, and how are they different from expats from a few years ago?
Global citizens, I think more people have more, just because they're exposed to more things that are worldwide. I watch the BBC quite a bit, right? And here, I live, while I travel a great deal, I get my news from different sources, right?
Yeah.
So I think people have the opportunity to see much more of the world, right? Without having to go there.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not going to harp on AR and VR, but I think that can play a role in that too. Understanding different cultures. I think there's the more that you can understand people, and I think the more you've experienced it. It used to be the only way was to be an expat, right? Yeah. Now you can experience it through all these different. We're talking via a video conference, right? We are what, 7,000 miles apart right now, but feel connected. I can start to get a sense of your culture. Having been there a lot, I think I get it anyway. But I think it'll become more ingrained in just what people think and I can understand it. So again, I think it's technology. I think the one thing is the more we could do that and have people understand different cultures, the better off we'll be. Right now, I think people feel disconnected from their own culture in a way, and we have to be very mindful of that, is to bring people back in so they feel that they're part of things. I think that it's our governments need to understand that, our educational institutions need to understand that things are moving so quickly. How do we help people understand that, have people ready for change, wherever they are and whatever their position in life is, just to be ready for that. I don't know that I really answered your question, but my expectation now of the millennials and like they have a greater appreciation for the globalness of people, and have a thirst for kind of understanding it. It's a way overgeneralization, and I think part of that is because they do, for the most part, like to travel, like to experience new things. So, hopefully they understand them a lot more too.
Brilliant. Thank you, Robert. I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for your views on mobility. It's a really interesting area. All the people that are listening or watching this, if you are in a sort of company, I would advise you to contact your global mobility area, just to initiate a conversation. So thank you, Robert, for that. I really appreciate your views. It's been really insightful and really interesting. We're going to stop it there. As I say, thank you very much, and I'll speak to you all soon. Thank you very much.